the artichoke you buy in the shop, that's where they got it. That's an artichoke. And so you harvest these little ones before they flower, and sometimes you'll see them heaps, like 20, 30 on one plant. You harvest them, put them in your backpack. When you get to your camp, make a fire, roll the coals out, and roast those spines off and eat it. It's highly nutritional. They've done lots of studies on it. Also, you can make fiber, like fishing line, from the stem. So you can twist that into a fishing line. It's really, really strong. Well, it's on my VIP list. It's everywhere on the edge. This is an edge plant. Or in an open paddock. Anywhere you are in the bush and city in the Cooktown, you're going to find these. It's not going to be very far away.
Awesome. Well, we're just going on a couple of those VIP plants. I just bought a few out of my garden there. I'd like to share because I see that there's different climates. I see some of them are here, but and maybe there are when we walk around. We'll see some more of them. I just thought while we're here, we'll point out a few and it's allowing other people to see more of them. This is South Thistle. It's got a yellow flower on top. If we're talking about lactating mothers, this is a fantastic plant. It's New Zealanders call it puha. So it's actually, a lot of New Zealanders have been brought up on puha and pork bones where they actually would have selected all the leaves and put it in the pot with pork. It's a tenderizer. It's one of the few things we eat with, well, the lettuce and stuff, which has got the milky sap. Quite often it's an indicator of be mindful of what you're eating when you've got any milky sap. And it's that sap which actually is, I think, is part of the meat tenderising process. For lactating mothers, it's really good iron and lots of nutrients along the way.
This one is also considered one of the best liver tonics on the planet.
Yeah.
People have eaten the death cap and survived by eating this.
Yeah.
But there is a thistle that looks very similar to this and it's poisonous. So you've got to positively identify it.
Pretty much with all your plants, you should.
Yeah, I know, we can pass one around.
Unless, they're cultivated.
That's true. It's a myth that, a lot of people come through my courses, they think, oh, I can just taste it and see if it's edible, but after a while you wish you had your mom with you.
It's called a gallant soldier. It's quite often growing in your gardens. So from a gardener's and farming point of view, it's actually a sign of sufficient nitrogen. It's called gallant soldier. So it's an edible, and it's an indicator, like you can say, okay, what is it doing for me? Well, you can know that you've actually got sufficient nitrogen levels in your crops if you've got that growing lots of. I see lots of little birds coming and eating the greens of it and the flowers of it, and a lot of these herbs are actually going through a process. They won't be there through the height of summer. They're actually more of a winter type herb, and they're going through a process. So you can spend your time getting rid of them, but after a while they actually die off as it comes into the hotter time, and you don't have to worry about it all. It's going back into the soil.
Lantana makes soil quicker than most plants on the planet. That's why it came here, because when we cut the forest down, the rains came and washed all the soil away. Lantana came consciously to rebuild soil and also give habitat to all the little animals. All these plants make a conscious decision to go where they're going. It's not just chaos.
It was introduced as ornamental, and it took advantage of the situation.
I saw some panic rusties only a few years ago selling little pots of lantana.
It's beautiful. And you can, a lot of people will grow cocoa over it, because you find it a lot along riparian zones where the soil is being disturbed, and it comes as one of the first pioneers to heal the ground. And even if you want to plant into it, like a lot of the environmental groups that do riparian tree planting, they'll poison it. But you can chop it and it will break down and make a beautiful mulch, and then plant directly into it.
That's such a good point, because it's utilising how you can use the situation as a pioneer plant instead of planting other pioneer plants for protection and working with it. And so once the other trees become established, it shades it out and it becomes redundant all on its own.
Big of it, especially in northern New South Wales, it's a job to cut it down. I know if you've ever tried to clear up a bunch of it's thick and strong.
But look at all of that soil mass, that biology,
And
it's carbon right there.
And when you're taking that from the creek banks, the amount of erosion that's created by having it there is I've done it at my place when I first was there, and I had little birds and all sorts of stuff. I took it out there and I lost all my habitat for my birds and started having to do a lot of other things to re-establish something. I thought, it's actually doing a good job, and sometimes it's better to work at these things subtly, just recognise and give thanks to its job, and then working with it subtly. This is another one which is not an edible. It's coming down to that signature thing. It's called Peruvian hops. I guess there's purple flower on it. Quite often you see it around cropping where there's potatoes or corn and stuff like that on the edges of the field. It's a sign of excessive nitrates. So it's soaking up the excessive nitrate, which is toxic for plants. It's only, I guess, using the chemical fertilisers, which we'll talk about more later.
Also, it pops up in chook pens, obviously, for nitrates because they're so high.
Yeah.
So high in the nitrate.
Yeah,
And it's soaking it up, making it being able to utilise and going through a process of doing that. So I guess this is where we start questioning when we're seeing these sorts of plants and their gestures and what they're actually doing. They're recognising what's the story that's going with it, not just saying, it's a weed, let's get rid of it. Ask the question, why is it there? What role is it playing? And I guess that's the biggest thing that I'd promote to people is to ask the questions and act with the role that's playing also.
And that's the observe before you interact. Like if you just trust that nature knows what it's doing, and if you don't know, just leave it. Just leave it and watch and wait. And sometimes because we have a camera and we'll show you, because that's probably my favourite gardening tool. Is if it's somewhat in the wrong place, or I want to make weed tea or something, I chop it, but I leave the root system in and let it regrow. So it's like as above, so below, as you said. It's releasing into the soil what's been taken from the top, and it's just like every time I see a weed, I'm just like, thanks for the biology, thanks for whatever nutrients. I don't even need do I need to know exactly what components are in here. I just trust that it's doing the right thing, and I'll leave it there. So when you come and have a look at our garden, you'll see there's weeds.
Or herbs.
Yeah.
You're talking to a lot of other people who say we've got to get rid of it.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to change that perception. It's got a very deep root. It's a sign of waterlogging. Quite often there's excessive, like a bit of a dip or something, they see it coming up, and to me I'm asking why is it coming up. It's like I've obviously over-watering an area where it's top of soil, there's a clay pan underneath, or there's a few situations occurring there which are around that. So you'd like to talk more about the
leaves, and you try to eat the young leaves, but they've got to build up toxin, so you wouldn't eat it every day. The other dock, which is curly dock, has a bigger, fatter leaf and more red in it, which is a sign of iron. That one is one of the herbs that the Native Americans smoked in the peace pipe. And it was a dried seed pod mixed with sage and the inner bark of red willow, which is salicylic acid. Tells you how close water is to the surface.
Which is the same as aspirin, right? Kind of takes away the pain and...
That's right, it's a muscle relaxant.
Yeah. Willows.
Yeah.
And it's a rooting hormone too.
Salicylic acid is the active ingredient.
Another one's spiny amaranth. So that's actually or needlebird. You see it growing out the back of dairies, pig pens, and areas where there's excess nitrates as well. It's doing the same job, soaking up that excess nitrate. And if you've got a nitrate problem, you'll have this. If you don't have a problem, you won't have it. And I guess I had a situation with my father. Is a mound of gravel where it put a water tank, and they had this cattle hanging around there just because they're being inquisitive, and he was showing me that you've got to get rid of those things. Well, there's gravel there. There's actually no real nutrient other than mineralised there. Cows are shit everywhere like that. It's growing everywhere because there's that extra nitrate with that. Just once we get the cows out of there and it goes through that process, it'll disappear, Or I'm sure it'll come up everywhere. I'm going, well, you don't see it happening. You see it underneath where cattle camp underneath trees and in other areas. And when you start seeing these things, you start asking the question, why is it there? What story is it telling us? And that's a classic of the nitrate, excessive nitrate thing. It is edible, being an amaranth.
We got 20 species, something like that, of amaranth in Australia. They all have the same flower stalk and leaf pattern. There's more fats and proteins per dried gram than meat. So this is a very, very important. You're always going to be close to amaranth no matter where you are in the bush from Sydney to Cooktown. You're going to find some species of amaranth.
Billy's got a red one that's going over here that we'll see later. It's a really big one. They're actually used throughout the world for a seed. And the grain you can make the popcorn out of it, putting it in your fry pan, grinding it up and making a flour based on it. There's a heap of different varieties. This is a smaller one. You see thousands of seeds come out of that seed flour there. In the garden situation in my place, its role there to me is soaking up loose nutrient and holding the soil together. So when you've actually cultivated it in this loose soil, it's quite often holding the soil structure together, and there's some loose nutrients there that actually it's soaking up and utilising. That's a fantastic thing to eat raw or put in a stir fry. And there's another variety that's a little bit reddish. But quite often there's a regular one in my garden, and it's a nice edible.
Yeah, just garden around it. Need it in your salad. And you can also sprout the seeds when they're mature. It's actually on the top 5 most nutritional plants on Earth. The U.S. agricultural government put together this list, and this is one of the ones on the top 5.
Nitrates in the soil will oxidize, and that's one of the major issues with this whole farming and the carbon farming sort of arena, is that nitrogen oxide has a global warming potential of 271 as opposed to carbon at 1. And then methane is somewhere up there as well. So that is a major concern. Like, we've got plants that are converting it into something more harmonious that we can just chop and drop and add bioavailable form of nitrogen to the ground and leave your weeds there.
Your herbs have this is out of my gardens, a leaf and have a taste. It's quite a nice one. It's a bit carroty in flavour. It's got a funny texture, but it'll go quite high. As where I see it in my garden, I quite often do what Neil does and just chop it and drop it if it's shading something out. If it's doing a job that I like, well, it's okay. If it's getting in the road, well, I just chop it and drop it and allow it to be.